Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of the DATEABLE podcast. We say beautiful people even though we can't see you. It's a podcast, but we hear you. We see the messages. Yes, you're all beautiful.
I love these intros are just getting more and more fun every week that progresses.
And for anyone new joining us, what is the DATEABLE podcast? We talk about everything that it encompasses modern dating. We discuss and we dive deep into the whys of people's behavior. But we have something very exciting for you all that we're going to share a little bit later. Is with the why comes the how. But we'll discuss that a little bit later. Just a little teaser for you. Stay tuned to the end of this intro. We'll tell you exactly what that is. But so many of you have reached out and said, love hearing about the whys. But now, how do we get to the hows?
Yeah, the how. But I think our listeners are beautiful people. We see you all in our Facebook group, even though maybe not physically. I feel like everyone, I love our listeners and just how genuine everyone is. I think that's the word that always comes to mind.
Genuine, introspective, empathetic,
emotionally available,
humble, all of it, all of these
dateable
great adjectives. Yes, and the way people come upon our podcast is just so interesting too. Maybe you found out about it through a friend. Maybe you heard us on a podcast you already listened to, or a lot of you just did a random search on the internets and you found us that way. And so many of you come to us because you're experiencing a crossroads in your life when it comes to dating, whether that becomes getting in or getting out of something, whether that becomes just wanting a change or something you just want answers or direction or clarity. We welcome everybody from all walks of life and from all situations, all crossroads. This is why we do this podcast, is just so we can all explore this crazy journey together.
I definitely think that a lot of folks come after a breakup or after a move to a new city, like some monumental shift. But I think we're going into ghosting today. We're going to actually have one of the members of our community, we love sourcing from the community, Kendra, who admits to be a ghoster. So a lot of times we hear of the people that, are upset that they're getting ghosted, but very rarely do we have the opportunity to talk to someone that fully admits and owns it and has overcome it. So we're super excited to do this episode because I think this is something that most of you have probably experienced in modern dating. What is it, like 80% of people have been ghosted in modern dating?
Reported ghosting.
Yes.
And then the other 20% just didn't want to admit that they've experienced it. It's one of those bullshit things that we all experience. And then they had to put a term to it, So now it's like a thing. You're like, oh yeah, I've been ghosted. It's been normalized because there's a word for it. Well, fuck that. We're here to show you that there is a very ugly side of ghosting, especially if you're a perpetual ghoster. And having Kendra on this episode will shed some light on the personal journey she's gone through to help her through, kind of the ramifications of ghosting people.
And I think she's the first to admit that it's never great to ghost. But I think this did shed some light on an alternative perspective of what internal struggles someone might be ghosting. And I think a lot of times we're always thinking like someone's out to get us in dating.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it really has nothing to do with us. I stumbled across a new dating term this weekend.
Oh no.
And I need to share it with you. It is kind of repulsive. It is kind of repulsive.
Another bad dating term, huh?
I think it's really bad. I saw this on the New York Post, so clearly a reputable source. But it came up like on my Google homepage, and it was roaching is the new gross trend to infest the dating world. That was the headline.
Oh no.
And can you guess what it means? Do you want to take a stab before I reveal?
Is that when you date multiple people and then leave them in the dust, basically? Like,
so close. It is with that you're dating multiple people, and it's basically when you realize that in fact there are many other lovers. You know how like when there's like one roach, and then there becomes more and more. So it's when the lights come on, and you basically know that there's all these roaches here. So it's inspired by the ickiness of seeing one of those nasty little bugs, but knowing when you turn the lights on, there are lots of them. So maybe you think that like your person is maybe dating like one other person.
Oh,
or
I see.
maybe it's not even, like maybe I think it says that you could feel like you're being roached if the person is not available or present to you. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's you find out there's one person, then there's two people, and so on. But yeah, so I feel like every dating term has the worst name. That just normalizes it.
That is just such a gross term, too.
It really is.
It just makes me feel things in my body that I don't want to feel.
No.
I'm disgusted by it.
Maybe it will discourage people from bad behavior because it's so freaking gross and no one wants to be like, I'm roaching or being roached.
Oh, so someone could be like, are you fucking roaching me right now?
Yeah.
And the other person could be like, oh,
I'm a roacher? That's so gross.
Wow. This term just reminds me so much of New York. I just came back from New York yesterday. It's not even just the roach itself. I saw so many fucking cockroaches, and it brought me to a time when I lived in New York and there would be roaches in my apartment on a regular basis. And that's the thing about New York. You live on top of other people, so you can keep your shit clean, but you can't control your neighbors. And if they have roaches, you're fucking getting the roaches. So there were roaches everywhere, and that's what I'm seeing. It's like when you come out of a bar and you see one roach, and maybe you like turn on a light or something, and then you see a bunch of roaches that are next to it. That is exactly what that is. But it also brought me back when I was in New York, brought me back to a time where I experienced all the terrible dating behavior, because New York is a breeding ground for that kind of shit. People roach all the time, and I met up with a friend of mine who is experiencing this exact thing. She's gone on 4 dates with a guy. Things were great, etc. But he was never available. He would be like, okay, let's go on Thursday, and you don't hear from him. But then on Saturday, he's like, hey, are you free now? So she finally
fell through.
Yeah. No, he wouldn't even, there's no explanation. It's just, oh, do you want to hang out Saturday instead? And she said on their last date together, their 4th date, it was on a Friday night. He sent her home at like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. after dinner. It was like, oh, you know what? I think we're done. Got her a car and just sent her home. And she's like,
what?
Fuck this. Yes. In New York on a Friday night. He probably went to roach other women. That's what I'm thinking he's doing.
The second shift. But was it you? I think it was you, Yue, that was saying that like when you were in New York, you had a friend that either was this person or dated this person that basically had someone in like every borough.
Every borough. Yes. Because people like tend to stay in their neighborhoods. So I had a dating client who thought he could get away with it because he can be in different boroughs with different women, and it'd be a different vibe, and the chances of you running into the other women would be very slim. Which is true. Unfortunately, in New York, it is very true. But that is like the most quintessentially disgusting thing about New York dating. And I hope our listeners who are dating in New York can shed some light on this, because when I went back this last week, not much has changed, because the city itself just lends itself to the bad dating behavior.
Well, it's so big, and I feel like you may think that you'll never see someone again. Although I have heard from people that live in New York, I've never lived there myself, that people do tend to run in similar circles and can see each other. Yeah. But I would assume on the apps, it might be people that you're never crossing paths with. So you would probably continue to never cross paths. Therefore, it kind of excuses that behavior. So hypothetically, I'm just making assumptions. Maybe if it was like a friend of a friend, you would have a little more like, oh, I might run into this person. Yeah. But if it's someone random, that it kind of like, it's like, oh, well, I'm never going to see them anyways.
Right, exactly. And New York has this weird reputation, right? It's got this reputation that men have so many options because there's more women than men. So they can roach, they can do all the stupid things that people do when it comes to dating. But then on the other hand, I was speaking to all my single male friends in New York, and they say the women are brutal. They're ruthless. They've experienced so much rejection that they become numb to rejection at this point. A guy friend of mine told me this. He said at bars, this has literally happened to him. He goes up to a woman before he could say anything. She sticks out her hand and goes,
Wow. That is ruthless. Wow.
No. Don't even think about it.
Direct to the point. Not,
Direct. Yeah,
no misinterpretation there.
And he says this happened to him more than once, that he's just numb to it. He's like, all right, on to the next.
So did you feel like you got ghosted more when you lived in New York versus when you lived in SF and were single?
I think so. Also because I also ghosted people. It just everything felt fleeting. That was the word. You go on a magical date with someone, and the next morning you wake up and you kind of are on the next train, you know?
Yeah.
You get, like, there's no sense of like repetition, because there's just so many people in New York that if you ghost one person, on to the next. It's like easy to bounce back. So that's why I feel like it breeds that kind of behavior.
Totally. I could see the paradox of choice being really hard there. Really hard.
It is such, like, talk about Temptation Island. Manhattan is Temptation Island. In the summertime, I forget. I think people just wear less and less clothes these days, because I don't remember walking around in bikinis in New York, but people do now. They just like a little bikini top. And there's one woman I saw legit had no pants on. She had a long t-shirt. I don't know. She probably had panties on, but she just had a t-shirt. She bent over. I saw her butt. I was like, you go, girl. God. You know, if you got no pants, you got no pants. You do your thing. But Julie,
I'm
like,
no one wants to wear pants anymore.
Nobody wants to wear anything.
She's like,
anymore.
I know I'm not at home anymore, but I'm just going to carry this out to the real world.
But she did have a mask on, so I respect her for that.
There you go.
She had her priorities right. But damn, I'm just thinking, if I were single and I just landed in Manhattan, oh my gosh, just the damage I want to do.
I think my favorite ghosting story happened to me. And Yue was also involved in the story. And this one continues to baffle me because, like, if we're going to go from opposites to what we were just talking about in New York, I feel like in San Francisco, people ghost all the time, not saying that San Francisco's immune to it, but it's a much smaller city. It's 7 miles by 7 miles.
Yes.
And the bulk of people live in certain neighborhoods. So I feel like the odds of running into someone is high.
Yes.
Which should discourage ghosting. It doesn't always, but you would think it would. I remember I went on this magical date. So I thought, and I was connected to this guy on LinkedIn. We were in like the same industry.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, we are still connected on LinkedIn, which is ridiculous. But we had so many connections that you would think like you wouldn't get ghosted by this person. We had what I thought was like that date that you like share everything about you. We had a kiss at the end. We had plans set up.
You were super attracted to him.
Yeah, it was like the whole thing just felt like it was. You know, I didn't even cross my mind I would get ghosted.
Yes.
At all.
Right.
And like we didn't have a firm date set up, which maybe should have been suspect, but I don't know. Sometimes when you're at the end of the date and someone's like, let's do this again, you just like assume they'll text you. It doesn't need to be, oh, it's going to be on this day. So the next day he even texted me. Like he was the one initiating, chatting. I think I had to be like, hey, I can't like talk anymore. I'm at work. I remember I opened my app on like that Saturday. This was like Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday. I opened my app. He's no longer there. And I'm like, okay, It's a little weird, but I know people have different behaviors of unmatching people if they've met up or whatever. And Sunday rolls around and I text him. And I was just like something simple like, how's your weekend?
But you were already suspecting something at that point, too.
Well, because I thought it was weird that I wasn't in the app. I mean, it did cross my mind that maybe he just fell for me so hard that he deleted his app. I'm just kidding. That did not cross my mind. But I was like, this is a little weird that I'm gone from the app. Like, I did think that was weird. But I texted him not thinking that it was him ghosting. I think I was just like, oh,
is everything okay? Yeah.
Or not even that. I think I was just like, how's your weekend? Like, I wasn't even, because he had texted me all day Friday, so it wasn't that weird. And then just nothing, okay? So I'm like, okay, you know, like sometimes that happens. Monday rolls around, nothing. And I think we had actually
No, you had plans on a Thursday.
Set up. We had plans set
Yes.
up. So it was, we had made the plan on Friday, or maybe it was even in person. I can't remember. We had the actual plan set up for that coming Thursday. Like we had date number 2 in the books. And Monday rolls around, nothing. Tuesday rolls around, and I'm like, should I reach out to this guy? Like, this is super weird. So I like hit him up again. Nothing. And then I was like, maybe like something happened to him. You know how your mind always goes there? And of course, Yue, being the good friend she is, she's like, I'm going to get on this and help you out.
To catch a ghost. I was just so pissed. Because why would you set up plans with someone and then not follow through? That is just you just don't do that with friends. You don't do that with strangers. You just don't do that as a respectable human being. So I didn't like that on a human being level. And I didn't love that you guys ended the date with so much excitement that there was just I don't understand what could have possibly happened to change his mind. So I was like, I got to get to the bottom of this. And for those of you who've heard this story before, it never gets old, right? It never gets old. I'm very good at creating fake profiles. I'm just the queen of it. I did it. I created fake profiles in New York to catch ex-boyfriends or to catch a predator. But I was able to create one with, it was a Photoshop of a very ethnically ambiguous woman.
I love that none of the photos were the same person either.
I basically combined photos of 2 of my friends who are mixed race. And then I created this profile that's very neutral, right? I think I made her a graphic designer, like it's like neutral, not polarizing at all. And so I created this account and I was like, okay, I'm going to find this guy. And Julie's like, no way
you're going to find this guy. No way. There's like zillions of people on Bumble.
And so I start swiping. At first, when I started swiping, it was purely for this guy. But then I kind of immersed myself into this new girl. And I thought, who else can I swipe on? So I started swiping on people I knew. Friends of mine.
She did finally find him somehow. I don't know how you did. How many swipes did you go through?
An hour of swiping.
It wasn't that long. It was
maybe half an hour.
Surprising how fast you found him.
I was very diligent. I found him and I sent it to Julie. I was like, is this a fucker? And Julie was like, yes, it is. And of course we match, right? Mm-hmm. That is the beauty of this story, is that we match almost right away.
Bumble is what I found out.
We matched almost right away and we started messaging. So I thought, well, if they were supposed to have a date on Thursday, what I was hoping to do was trying to get him to ask me out, and I would suggest Thursday. So we started texting, but he was very slow in his responses. But it didn't matter because Bumble has location tracking.
Sounds so creepy when we say it out loud.
We were able to see where he was. First of all, we established that he was still alive. Okay?
Yes, he was alive. He was kicking. He was responding.
And then second, we were able to establish whether he was at work, which was in the city, or at home, because that was outside the city. So we could see throughout the day that he was traveling. So he was traveling from work and home. It's being a normal dude. So we started talking, and I was trying to flirt with him, but also not trying to be too aggressive. He never asked me out, though. He never had the ask out. He was very slow to respond. I was not able to trap him, but I trapped a few of my guy friends that I saw.
And while he was really slow to respond, I remember you're like, I'm also talking to this couple right now.
Oh, that's right.
You're like, they're a little more interesting than he is, actually. I might shift gear over there. But you also failed to mention that your fake person had like 100% success rate.
Well, as far as we know.
Yeah, so you were just baffled why this guy was not taking the bait.
The profile I created, again, is not polarizing. She's very attractive. Also, all different types of people would like her, including couples. And I just wanted to see. It was actually a really interesting experiment because of the week that I did this, nobody asked me out. Everyone was down this texting black hole of like, what do you do? What do you like to do for fun? There was, in fact, one guy I was speaking to that I lied so much about my upbringing, and it coincidentally was also his upbringing. Like, I named this this high school randomly in Fresno. Who's from Fresno, first of all? And he's like, that is down the street from me. I grew up next to that high school. Do you know blah, blah, blah? I couldn't believe it.
So if you aren't getting a response you want, it's probably you being a troll on Bumble. No.
Hey, first of all, I was the best troll ever. I was very responsive.
You were.
I was trying to take it offline.
You were on it. But I did eventually text him again and was like, hey, like if things had changed for you, all you needed to say was that. Right. And I still hold that true. It's like, yes, I thought it was a great connection. The reality was we met each other for 2 hours.
But then he never responded back to that either, right?
And I think that's the part I'm saying. It's like I just feel like it's such a simple thing that you could just be like, hey, things changed for me. And I did find him on Instagram because I knew who he was. And it was clear that he entered a new relationship. And
my theory.
Yes.
Went back to an old relationship that he was never really completely out of.
Right. And regardless, it looked like this person was like further along because it happened very fast. So I think a lot of times there is a lot of that going on with dating because people are just like testing out the waters. But I think I don't know. It's just like weird to me still that you just wouldn't be upfront with someone and say that. And I think people like to keep the option open by not saying anything. But I'm sorry, you're losing the option if you're playing those cards. Like, and also, what is he going to do? Message me in a month? I'd be like, no, you fell off the face of the universe.
People fucking forget. Even if you're in a big city, word travels.
Yes.
And girlfriends talk. And if you do something shitty, they will tell their friends. And you will get that reputation. Even in a city like New York, this happens too. So don't think you can get away with shitty behavior, no matter who you are.
Nope. So UA is for hire. She will track down your ghosts. It's only like $1,000 an hour. No big deal. But she's ready. She has the profile. But you know what? I was thinking about it because I definitely got ghosted other times than just this. This wasn't the most. This one hit me the hardest for whatever reason because it was so unexpected. But I've definitely been ghosted before, and the reality is I can't remember any of those people's names. And I think at the end of the day, I'm with someone I'm crazy about now. It doesn't matter. Like, and you just celebrated your 3-year anniversary, which is what brought you to New York. So all the people that ghosted you, like they were just kind of, they were on your path to get to where you need to be.
They were little roaches.
Blips. They're roaches.
Yeah. Roaches that I don't recall names of. I just remember they did not need to be in my life. That's all.
So how was the anniversary trip while we're on the topic?
The trip was fantastic. You can't go wrong in New York. And I feel like every time I go to New York, I just don't need sleep because you just have so much energy all the time without, drugs. It's just like, why does it have so much energy? I will say this, though, as an anniversary trip, I wish we had done something different because we both have so many friends in New York that it ended up being like a catch up with friends trip. And it didn't feel like romantic or we were connecting with each other. It was more like, hey, I want you to meet these friends and I meet your friends, which is nice, but not for an anniversary trip. This was also an interesting observation is that, we've been together for 3 years, but to my New York friends, he's like a new guy in my life because a whole year and a half of COVID, obviously we didn't come to New York. And before that, we were together for, less than a year. So I wasn't going to bring him to New York to meet friends then. So now 3 years later, they're just now meeting him. They still consider him brand spanking new. To me, we've been together for a long time. So that was a kind of interesting because of time, right? It's just an interesting observation.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see that because you would like feel like obligated almost to like be with people, whether and if you like went somewhere secluded, it's like just you guys.
Yeah. I just want to explore somewhere new with my partner, and we can etch those memories together. And I gave them this feedback on our last day. I was just like, didn't feel like an anniversary trip. So we're going to do a do-over. We're going to go somewhere we haven't been. This was more just like a mini vacation.
I love it. There you go. That's the beauty, is it never needs to be final. I still can't believe it's been 3 years. Like, I mean, I've met him from the very start. I'm just like baffled that it's been that long. Like, I know it has been. It just like went by in a blip.
It went by really, I think, because of COVID.
Yeah.
Right? I think COVID just, I don't know, has slowed time down and has sped
away.
it up at the same. Yeah, it feels like it took some years away. But I do want to give a shout out to his friend Steve, who I met, who's been listening to Dateable on his walks in New York. Steve says hi to Julie. And Julie, would you like to say something to Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to hear if everything that Yue said checks out about New York. But I'm assuming you might be her source, so probably.
Steve is fantastic. Thanks so much for listening to the show. And it's always fun to get feedback from people who listen, because we're kind of in a bubble, the two of us. And I feel like a lot of my friends who listen to Dateable really love the diverse stories, the diverse perspectives. Just hearing how other people date is not only just helpful, but it makes them feel like they're not alone in this whole thing. So that's their feedback.
Well, that's, I think, maybe feedback we do, but
it's not new
feedback.
You're
gonna be like, and we hate this part.
They really don't like, well, I mean, I definitely have friends who don't listen to any of the episodes that don't apply to them specifically, which is, we've heard that feedback as well. But we will also encourage you to listen to all the episodes. Go back, listen to all the episodes you skipped, because I bet you'll learn more from those episodes than not.
I think also, I mean, I know it's like hard. We have a lot of episodes. We do. But there was a post in the Facebook group about like wanting to do an episode about single parents. And we definitely should revisit it for sure.
Yeah.
But we did have some great episodes earlier on the topic. And there was also a comment about consent and sexual assault and abuse. And we had an abuse survivor that was actually on the podcast as well. So I know the comment was like, why haven't you touched this topic? But we actually do have this topic. So I think sometimes there's just a lot to go through. Totally get that people come in at different times. And we'll definitely revisit the topics that people really seem to want. And again, one single parent is not going to be the same as another. One abuse survivor, not the same as another. So it's not that we can never do it again. But while you're waiting anxiously, there are episodes you can listen to.
Yes, and we'll keep doing episodes on ghosting and similar behaviors, because these never get old. These stories never get old. And Kendra's stories are so unique from her perspective as the ghoster that we thought that this was actually a little different than the other ghosting stories we've done.
Our big announcement? Yeah.
We've been teasing this, haven't we? Oh, so we talked about the why. This is how we intro every episode, because we want to get to the bottom of people's behavior. But then once you figure out the why, how? How do you implement the learnings? How do you get people to change their behavior? How do you change your own behavior? And we've been working on something for the last few years, believe it or not. COVID really lit a fire under our asses to get this in order, because we've been asked by so many people if we have come out with workshops, courses, coaching, and we've dabbled with all of it, but we wanted to give you all something more substantial than these one-offs. And the sounding board was a perfect first step for us to get to that level. And then here comes the next level. Truly feel like we cracked the code on love, believe it or not. And we've tested this out on ourselves. Obviously, the two of us are in loving relationships. And it's because we've implemented some of the learnings that we've been collecting for the last 5 years. And cracking the code doesn't exactly mean hacking the system or shortcuts to love. No. It just means we figured out step-by-step approach to building up your confidence, building up this feeling and atmosphere and this life where you can create and find the love of your life.
And we've kind of crafted this model, essentially, of how this kind of all plays together.
So we're obviously very excited for this to happen, but also extremely exhausted from putting all of this together. This is what we've been secretly working on. We've alluded to this in the past, but we've been secretly working on this for over a year now, and we can't wait to release this out into the public. So a couple ways to get all the announcements. Sign up for our email list. Go to dateablepodcast.com. Follow us on Instagram at dateablepodcast. Join our Facebook group, Love in the Time of Corona by Dateable Podcast. Those are the three places we will be making the announcement for the early bird waitlist first before we announce it in other channels.